Hello, I'm Professor Rachel Gurvich from the University of North Carolina School of Law, and this is a video about how to cite cases that you're looking at in Westlaw. So let's take this case that my students will be very familiar with, Nelson v. Lewis. This is a case that comes from the Appellate Court of Illinois, and it was decided in 1976. So first, let's start with when you're looking at an opinion in Westlaw or a legal database, as opposed to in a reporter or in an edited version provided by your professor, let's figure out where the case itself actually starts. So here on Westlaw, we have a lot of material up here, right? We have West's headnotes, we have the synopsis. All of this material is editorial content added by people who work at Westlaw, right? And the idea here is that this material is helpful to summarize what happened in the case and also as a system of research cross-references. So you might be learning in your legal research classes about the key number system, about headnotes, about various ways to use one case on point to parlay that reference and research other related topics or similar topics in other jurisdictions. And a lot of what's up here can help you do that. But this is not a research series. This is a video about citation literacy. So let's keep scrolling. Okay, again, all of this is the editorial content added by West's editors, and the actual opinion starts down here right after, helpfully, the word opinion. So what that means is if you find something up here that's helpful, that's fantastic, but don't cite it as it appears in the headnote, right? Go down to the actual opinion, which you should be able to do by clicking that headnote. It should take you to where that headnote and that rule of law appears in the case itself. And that's what you want to cite, to the actual case itself. Now, let's take a look at this highlighted sentence, right? The instant statute and its immediate predecessor substantially ease this burden imposed by the common law. So let's just keep that in our minds as we move through the rest of this video, okay? And notice also this number here, 272, okay? We'll come back to that. So first thing I wanted to show you is up here, if you wanted to actually look at how this opinion appears in the print reporter, or at least in a print reporter, you can click here, original image, and it will pull up the PDF. In this instance, it's in the regional reporter, the Northeast Second series, all right? And I've actually already done that for you here. Now I feel like I'm running a cooking show. And here is the actual opinion, right, scanned as it appears in that volume, right? So here we have the initial page is on 268, and then 269. Again, we have those same West's key numbers and the headnotes up here. And then the opinion starts here. There's no actual word opinion in the book version, but it starts after the judge's name. Okay, now remember, I told you to look at that one sentence. So let's find it here, right? So physically, I'm on page 272 of this book, and I can see that sentence we looked at, right? The instant statute and its immediate predecessor substantially ease this burden imposed by the common law. Okay, so what I'm trying to get at is the way that cases appear in Westlaw really mimic how they appear in the actual books. So here, the first line on 272 is that sentence we looked at on page 272. And here, when we go back down, we can see that this star pagination, right? I'll talk about that in a minute. We see the number 272, and immediately we know, the page has changed. Now we're on page 272, and this is the first sentence on that page. Okay, so notice throughout there are these two sets of star page numbers, right? 2 stars here, 272, and 1 star, 133. Well, what do these correspond to? In fact, they correspond to the 2 different reporters that this opinion may be found in. So let's scroll all the way back up to the top of the opinion, and we see, right, it's this is one citation from the Illinois Appellate Reporter, the official reporter, and then there's another citation to which is the one we looked at for the regional or the West unofficial reporter. We can see that those same 2 citations appear right up here, right? So 36, ill app third, starting on page 130, that's the initial page. And here, 344 any second starting on page 268. So then when the opinion begins, right, we can see and sort of decode and say, aha, 1 star, right, corresponds to the page number in this reporter, in the Illinois Appellate Reporter. And the 2 stars, right, this corresponds to the page numbers or the pagination in the unofficial or the West Regional Reporter. So hopefully that makes sense. But we have these 2 sets of paginations kind of running throughout, right? Here's where the opinion begins, and now we're sort of heading forward. Okay. Sorry, here's where the opinion begins, right? The initial page numbers could appear right earlier, right? 268, we saw for a few pages, it was only the editorial content. Okay, so then how do I pin cite? So imagine, right, that I am citing to this same sentence we've been looking at, right? And the main thing I want to leave you with is to get a pin cite, you have to go backwards from the sentence that you're looking at, right? So this appears on page 272 of this reporter and on page 133 of the other reporter. So if we're doing a pin cite, that's where we'd start, right? We'd take the volume information. If we're doing a full cite, we'd need the initial page, and then we'd need the pin cite. Often students want to sort of go forwards, but that's not helpful in this context, right? To get the exact pin cite, the right page, we need to go backwards or go forwards and then subtract 1, right? So I see I've gotten to page 134. That means that this must be on page 133, okay? One last thing to show you about when you're looking at cases in Westlaw, and that is copy with reference. Copy with reference is your friend. So let me show you what I mean by that. So here we are. Oops, my cat just walked in front of me, which was a surprise. Okay, I have now copied part of my text, and say I want to take that text and move it over and move it with, in fact, a citation. So I'm going to go here and I'm going to select copy with reference. And then I'm going to go over to my document here. It's just a random Google Doc, and I'm going to paste it. So what's happened, right? It has copied the text that I wanted, and it has also generated a citation for me, right? In this instance, it's generated a parallel citation. It's generated a citation using underlining instead of italics, but that's sort of the choice. And in fact, it's also hyperlinked, right? Which is very helpful for the early writing stages and the research stages, okay? So look at this beautiful citation that I have, right? It's a really good start. We also have to compare that citation against the Blue Book, right? And against whatever citation format or citation instructions we're following. So for example, if I only wanted to be citing the unofficial reporter, meaning I didn't want to use parallel citations, I would have to take out this part of the citation, but then I would have to add in manually the court identifier here in this paragraph, because remember, when it's not apparent what the court is just by the reporter cite, we have to add it in the parenthetical, right? Similarly, if I were copying and pasting this, I would want to make sure that if I were using italics, I changed this to italics instead of underlining, that I included a period at the end of my citation. And unless you are intentionally doing this or your professor or the court asked you to, you'd want to remove the hyperlink as well. But that's how you get from reading a case on a Westlaw screen to getting yourself a citation in a document that you can use. I hope that's helpful, and that's the end of this video.